Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday, August 23rd agenda session. If I could get a motion on our minutes, please. I do have a motion on our minutes. I do have a second. Without objection, they will stand. Ordinances on final reading. We have item A for Judd Road. Councilwoman Knoll, no surprises there this evening on final reading? No. Thank you. We have our ordinances on first reading that have been deferred. Both of those with the name of Josh Barr. Are we ready to move on those this evening, Councilwoman? We are. Okay. Thank you very much. We do have a couple of items. I do want to go over, Councilman Henderson, if you would hit your light and give us a little more information on item C, please. And if you need help from the staff too, that bring them in on the conversation.
Yeah, thank you. So Karen, we if you don't mind to come up and you can probably describe it a little bit better than I can, but I had some heartburn about doing away with the suburban infill and had some concerns, and working with Karen and RPA, I think we've come up with a good compromise, a good solution to the situation. But if you want to just kind of briefly go over it for council, kind of what it does now and some of the things it does away with as far as involving RPA and things like that.
Okay. The original proposal, the original ordinance was removing the suburban infill and urban infill lot compatibility options. The alternate version continues to remove the urban infill lot compatibility option. I think at the time we talked about this, we mentioned we have a lot more tools now, like the RTZ and the UGC that work as tools for that. The suburban infill lot compatibility option in the alternate version is remaining in the ordinance. It's been in there, I think, about 10 years now. It is remaining. It's really, the amendment does three things. It highlights the fact that it is in place. So we just kind of edited the intro section to highlight that the lot sizes are in play in the R1 zone, but that the suburban infill lot compatibility option is still there. We removed those. They'll be going to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and RPA's opinion doesn't really matter there. It's more based on the calculations and all the math that's involved in that section. And then the third change is clarifying that this goes to the Board of Zoning Appeals for variances. So the process will still continue. Instead of Planning Commission seeing a couple variances every month, those variances, if submitted, would go to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Thank you, Karen. Mr. Chairman, I think this is a much better option for us. And I would like to, I guess, request, or if I need to move, that when we come to this, that we read the alternate version as the version that we vote on tonight.
Duly noted.
Thank you, sir.
Yes,
Thank you,
sir.
Karen.
Thank you. I have a couple quick questions for Karen before you sit down. Will you describe real quick for council what we've said the word a lot, suburban infill option is that we are retaining?
Okay. In the R1 zone, so these are only for properties in the R1 zone outside the urban overlay. So not the river to ridge area, everywhere else in the city. The R1 zone has a minimum lot frontage of 60 feet. This calculation was put into place to say, if you look down the block on either side and there is not a lot size that small, then you're using a calculation to determine a compatible lot size. It may go down to the 60 feet, that's the set standard in the zone, but it might be a wider frontage to be more compatible with lots in the area. The whole idea is that any subdivision of lots is compatible with what's around it. So this maintains that compatibility. So any subdivision of property that's not on a new street would use that suburban infill lot compatibility option. So the idea, I think, if you only have 200-foot wide lots, that someone could not come in and do a 60-foot wide lot that's not compatible with what's surrounding it.
Okay.
There's a lot of math involved, so it can be kind of complex to get to the right frontage number.
And that makes sense. When you're talking about moving items to BOZA, do they come with a new set of criteria or definitions for qualifying for the or for qualifying for a decision, or are they going to simply use their list of 4 or 5 hardship definitions to determine?
They will be.
That's been a point of conversation for a few years now.
That's correct. They will be using those 4 or 5 points of hardship or what is allowed or given to them by state law for consideration. Those will be in play. We also have the option if someone could choose to pursue a rezoning. So we do have zoning tools and can go through the public process to see if a smaller lot size is acceptable, and that would go through the normal zoning process.
would
So
run
we
through-
would also have that discussion with an
Right,
applicant.
that runs through PC and then council,
Correct.
totally bypassing BOZA. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes,
think
sir.
also, if I could add to the council, this does provide for, well, community input, a public hearing when it goes to BOZA. So the community, the public can provide input. They have an opportunity to be heard, if someone were to request a variance that would be different from what the math calculations are. So I think it provides an extra layer of protection for the community.
Sure. Oh, I see where you're going with it, Councilman. I totally agree. It's just when we get to BOZA, it seems to be very locked down into, does it meet one of those criteria? And if it doesn't, it's completely thrown out, and those variables tend to get lost. I've seen it firsthand
Yeah,
many
yeah.
times. So, but I see where you're going, and I think it's an ongoing conversation and something we could definitely improve on as we move forward with the rewriting of our code system as well. I think there's a lot of work for us all to sit down in the future and talk about.
Just all the changes that we've made recently have all been passed along to Camiros, is to say that, a solution had been identified, but we need probably a better solution moving forward in the future.
Yes, thank you. All right, good job. Anything else, Councilman Henderson, on that?
I think that's it.
All right,
Thank you.
appreciate your input on that. Thank you, sir. Moving along into resolutions, we have several appointments. We do have a deferred appointment. I will ask Councilwoman Coonrod, are we good to continue with the item deferred from 8:16, ma'am?
Joda 2 days ago. I mean, for myself, I'm not gonna vote for it. I mean, I would
Okay,
deny it, but I mean, it's really up to the council.
Sure.
I think when we talk about making sure that we have diversity on our board, and the library is a very important board when you look at diversity. And I still have some concerns. I've shared them with Joda, like I said, and but we can move forward if that's what council chooses to do.
okay. I wanted to make sure too I just want to make sure you had the opportunity to have your questions answered. And that's what I was looking for. Thank you for that. Madam Vice Chair, I see your light.
Yes, and I wasn't here last week, so I'm not sure what the conversation was regarding this particular appointment, Anna Taylor. She is a District 7 resident. She comes with a diversity of experience in library systems. She's a great person to be on the board, so I did want to make sure that that was on the record. I do 100% support this appointment. She has a degree in library studies. I don't know what the degree is, but she has a degree in that. She's a transplant from New York who's worked in their library system for years. And so I think she would be a great asset to our library board. So I did want to express my support for that, that she's a great candidate. And of course, she's District 7. So I just wanted that on the record.
No
Thank
bias
you.
at all. I understand.
Yeah, no bias.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I just want to make sure everyone's questions and concerns are at least addressed. Moving on through items C through J on the rest of our appointments, is there any concern or comments we need to make before this evening? C through J. Okay. And Karen, we will have the Area 11 plan public hearing this evening. We've allotted 30 minutes for that. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address. Karen, are you planning on doing a short presentation to kick off the Area 11 public hearing?
We were not planning on doing that. We do have presentation and staff. We do have a presentation available if you'd like it. We also have staff here to answer questions.
Stand by real quick. Going back to item E, Madam Clerk, on our appointments, we have a misspelling. of Decorah, I believe, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And that's, I think we have a misspelling. If we could get with the city attorney's office and make sure that's,
It's correct on the agenda.
is it
for
correct on
6
the
p.m.
agenda?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Karen, I apologize.
We can use your guidance if you'd like us to start that with just a few slides, kind of over, as an overview of it, that you have seen that before, so however you'd like to handle it.
I think it prudent that we probably kick off with at least a couple minutes. If you could do a brief overview of the process and also the Area 11 and hit some highlights for us, I think it would give some context to and round out the public hearing.
We will do that, yes.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you. Any questions on purchases, council? If you look at tonight's, I believe there are 7 purchases for this evening. You've had those in your inbox earlier in the week. I believe we have no emergency purchases and we do not have any RFP requests this evening. Moving along to our August 30th agenda, if you would please take a look at that and let me know if there's any questions. I'll watch the board for your light. We will have several planning items. Public Works, we have a lot of abandonments. Tom or Bill, anything we need to know? Ben, all pretty exciting stuff. No issues. We covered a little bit of this at 9:30 this morning, but okay, smooth sailing. Is that what you're saying, Tom? Famous last words. Councilwoman, I see your light.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to discuss item 6A, it's ordinance on first reading, ordinance to amend Chattanooga City Code Part 2, Chapter 2, I guess that's Article 21, Downtown Central Business Improvement District, related to special assessment procedures for certain nonprofit organizations.
Yes.
I was not here last week either. This hasn't gone through legislative, correct?
No, I've introduced this
Okay.
and with support from Madam Vice Chair and also support of Councilman Smith. And it is a tweak to the CBID ordinance that removes the 2 churches that have been in question, a point of contention, if you will, for the last, well, since CBID was created. And I also, in full disclosure, sit on the Executive Finance Committee for the DCA. And Madam Vice Chair and I also sit on the Executive Board for the DCA, and we have the full support of the DCA.
Okay, so I was, as I read through this ordinance language, not having a red line version, I assume, based on what you're saying, that the only section that changed was section F. Is that correct?
That is correct. And if you would like, and item I will have that red line version sent to you
Okay.
as well. But in full disclosure, the red line version has also been sent to the DCA. And
Okay.
we're reviewing it right now to make sure that there's nothing that gave them heartburn, so to speak.
Okay, super. And then knowing, I assumed that that was your intent based on the language of the ordinance on the agenda. However, the change in the language that I see in item F to me doesn't really do anything. As I read it, it says that, waivers, you can seek a reduction or waiver on a case-by-case basis each year. And then it says the CBID board, later on, the CBID board has determined under this subsection that these 2 churches are qualified for the exemption waiver. But to me, does not the first language that says you can seek on a year-by-year basis take precedent over that? To me, it's just like, by the way, these 2 folks have cleared the waiver process the last 2 years.
So if you read further, and I
Okay.
do not have that in front of me, or I would have addressed this for you. If you read further on, it does specify specifically, if I can use those 2 words together, the addresses and naming the churches.
Well, it says that they are qualified
Mhm.
for this exemption, But it doesn't say that they have been granted this
It does further on.
as not, where does, okay, we'll talk about it more. I'm
Yeah.
not seeing that in this
Yes,
language.
it does in a further paragraph. It actually names the church, both churches, and their specific addresses and identifies them as being removed from the fee. And that was the intent. Everything else remains exactly the same. There is no other changes to it, other than removing the two churches.
Okay, yeah, I'm not seeing that anywhere in
Okay.
this language, so maybe,
I'll make sure you,
maybe I got
I'll
the
make sure
old
you see
link.
it.
I don't know. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
no, you're welcome. I appreciate you bringing up that question.
Okay.
I'm going to make sure everyone's clear. It's a very minor tweak. It's basically plucking the two churches right out of it for being.
Yeah, I mean,
for
the
fee.
churches are there in this document that I'm looking at with their addresses,
Mhm.
but it says that they're qualified for the exemption and waiver of the special assessment. But to me, it doesn't say, that doesn't imply, based on the language preceding it, that they therefore receive it. It's one thing to be qualified for it. It's another thing to actually be granted the reduction based on this language as I read it.
We'll double check it. but
Okay.
The intent is to
To
remove
get them
them
out
completely.
long-term, they
Yes.
don't have to apply every year, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for bringing that up. Dr. Burgess, I see your light.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I think I heard you say that you and the vice chair were on the board.
We are.
Okay, does that disqualify you from voting?
That's a great question. And if it is, then we will definitely not sponsor that because I would not want to get into.
Sorry, I
No, that's
come
a
up
great
with all
question.
this esoteric legal stuff.
No, that's a great question. Yeah. Even though they're for it.
Yeah, I just think, I think it may be a little neater.
Yeah. So we'll, looking at the Madam Attorney, she's smiling at me going, we may need to remove ourselves from that one. We'll talk. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're very welcome. And if we need to remove ourselves, I do have Councilman Smith as a sponsor. There's another, we have one sponsor. I'll need another sponsor. Okay. Are you volunteering? Yeah. Okay. So you're volunteering. Oh, you're not. Okay. I will need another sponsor if we have to remove ourselves. So we will make sure all of that is cleared up by week's end. Yeah, thank you. Moving into resolutions, we have several appointments again. Mr. Anderson, anything you need to add or would like to add with the plethora of appointments that are being made? And do any of these coincide with Mayor Kelly and Mayor Coppinger's joint appointments that I know was brought to council's attention and that the county commission also passed last week in a little bit expedient fashion as well due to that relationship and appointments that have been in the pipeline?
Yes, and we are accommodating County Mayor Coppinger by placing those three Air Pollution Control Board joint appointments on your agenda for next week. I don't have anything to add beyond what's on here. I did reply to some issues with Councilwoman Burrs and Councilwoman Hill about their appointments to various boards. If you have any other questions that I didn't answer, please, I'll stick around after this and be available.
Okay. And I want to make sure if you have any questions about board appointments before they hit our agenda for a vote, please reach out to Mr. Anderson. I'm sure he will work diligently to answer your questions. Moving into item P, I think is of interest. Jody, would you like to explain that one a little bit for us? This also came as a request from the mayor's office.
Yes, this is the CHA item, correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
Yes. So the administration is excited to have the opportunity, thanks to a partnership that has emerged with the Chattanooga Housing Authority, that 100 spots at the Chattanooga Housing Authority have opened up for us to rapidly rehouse individuals who were previously homeless. And for $600 a person for a year, it's a steal for us. And our partnership with CHA has allowed us to begin housing folks already. And this is part of our kind of continued work with the Chattanooga Housing Authority on a number of different areas to rapidly rehouse folks. And rapidly rehousing people makes this problem a lot less expensive than if you were to let it linger and then become a chronic homelessness issue. And so for our community, we believe this is the best way forward, and we hope council approves this.
Thank you. Hang on, Madam Vice Chair.
Hey, Joda. I had a question about this one, just because I was out at one of the sites this morning, and they asked me about mental health services and things like that. So will those individuals, if they need services, whether it's mental health services or whatever the case may be, will we be checking in on them? Will we make sure that their caseworker is, or what's going to
Yes.
be the case here?
Yes, absolutely, Councilwoman. So our Office of Homelessness and Supportive Housing does exactly that. They provide those services and make sure that they're connected to the resources they need to stay housed over the long term. We know it's a lot easier to deliver those services whenever we can reliably count on them to be in the same place at the same time, and they have a roof over their head, and we can track them down. And then the way that most of these folks are going to be rapidly rehoused into these units is they have a relationship with our Office of Homelessness and Supportive Housing already. And so connecting to those resources is much easier whenever we're able to provide that housing.
Okay, that works. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thanks.
Dr. Burrs, please.
Joda, I think it's a great idea. Where's the money coming from?
So this is coming from
pot in the budget.
Yeah, so this is coming from some of the remainder of the emergency allocation that you provided through our American Rescue Plan funding.
Okay. And then what's the plan for after the year?
I think this is something that we have to discuss with the Chattanooga Housing Authority. Obviously, this is going to be a part of the discussion around the West Side Evolves plan, which you will hear at some point. So I think we have to have a longer term plan than those specific units. But we are working diligently with landlords all across the city to identify folks who are willing to take a Section 8 voucher. These folks all qualify for vouchers, which cover a vast majority of their rent, and then getting them stood up to get into a place where they have more permanent benefits, for example, if they're veterans or if they qualify for disability. Those are going to be revenue sources to keep those folks home, housed over the long term. And then, of course, many of them will go back to work. They will get ready to go get a job and get sustained income on their own. There may be some need in the future for city assistance, but we don't anticipate requiring this over the long haul. This is just really an emergency measure to get folks off the streets.
So this is a transition year.
Yes.
At which gets me back to my colleague's question. So during that year, will they be getting what they need to help them
Yes, Councilwoman.
transition?
Absolutely. That's entirely the philosophy this administration has taken to
Okay.
homelessness from the very beginning.
Thank you.
Good, Dr. Burrs. Thank you. Thanks, Joda. I do have an item for parks under Q, but I'll wait till we're in committee. Maybe we can go over that item with you, Scott, at that time. Any other questions for our August 30th agenda? Moving into future considerations, if you'll take a look at those, there are a few items I think we need to probably address. Mr. Goldberg, do you want to talk a little bit about the budget amendment proposal? And while you're coming, we do have the DCA or the bid coming to us on the 30th for a presentation. It says the 13th, but I have them on the books for the 30th. That's the item to approve their budget. So, yes, ma'am. Councilwoman Coonrod, hold your light. Dr. Burrs, hit your light. It's okay.
So we scheduled all those discussions with,
Yes.
okay, so.
Yes.
Do you want him to make a presentation now?
No,
or
I just want him to walk through kind of the cliff notes.
Okay,
Yeah, just the cliff notes.
all right.
I'll start with the CBID. They will be here on the 30th to present during the 3:30 agenda session. The resolution will be placed on the agenda for the 13th of September.
Okay, thank you.
That way you all get a presentation ahead of time, not at the last minute. And then as Councilwoman Burrs mentioned, the schedule for us for the budget amendment is we would do a full presentation to the city council on the 13th. Whenever you want us to do that, I'm assuming during agenda session. But
That'd
that
be
would be
fine.
the day we do it. And then the 20th, we would hold our public hearing, which is required before you all take any action on a budget ordinance. And then the budget ordinance will be placed on the agenda for the 27th for first reading, and then the following week for second reading. And the last item we have is amendment to a resolution regarding tool allowances for our mechanics in the garages and at the wastewater treatment plant. In the budget this year, we did increase the amount of tool allowance, but we noticed recently that there's a discrepancy in the old resolution about who is eligible to get the tool allowance. So we just need to amend the resolution to make sure it has the correct eligibility for the people that should get it.
Very good. Can you go back to item A and talk a little bit of the bid or DCA will be aligning itself financially to our calendar year? Will you tell us why?
Yeah, I will.
That's
And
important.
they'll expand on this when they're here. They'll have more accurate and current information, but essentially they've been operating on a calendar year, which causes issues when they're trying to develop a budget on our fiscal year, especially since tax season occurs, right toward the end of the calendar year for them, whereas it's in the middle of the year for us, closer to the beginning. So what they're going to do is retroactively apply to the IRS for a year change. So that will go back to July 1st of 2022. They're allowed to do this as long as they do it before the 990 is due for the nonprofit entity. So they're within that window. So what that means is they will have a short year that ends June 30th. So it started January 1st, 2022. It ends June 30th, 2022. And then they will start a new fiscal year, July 1st, 2022, that goes through June 30th, 2023. That will get them on the same fiscal year that we have, which will make it much easier for budgeting purposes, discussing, the tax issues, the issues with billing the CBID fee on the tax bills. They'll have more timely information about waivers and who has applied and who has been awarded waivers and those sorts of things. So it'll make it a lot easier all the way around for them to be on the same budget cycle that we're on.
Very good. Appreciate that explanation. If anybody has any questions. Councilwoman Coonrod, if you'll hit your light, I apologize. I did see you a few moments ago.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to get clarity on the boards. Are our board appointments strictly given to citizens of Chattanooga or the surrounding area, Hamilton County? Or are we appointing people to our boards that also live in Georgia?
I'm going to let Mr. Anderson field that question, but I would assume that you would be a resident of Chattanooga or
Councilwoman,
Hamilton County.
State law requires typically for most boards, state of Tennessee residency. It's interesting. Like oddly, the state law allows you to live in Memphis, but not Rossville for a bunch of boards. But I will say we have 51 boards and commissions in the city government, and that is not one size fits all. So if you can give me information about specific boards, I can research it and verify that applies to those boards.
Okay, thank you. Well, if they live in Tennessee and want to commute all the way to Chattanooga to serve on the board, I'm not debating that. But there are a couple of people on here that's being appointed that do not live in Tennessee. So that's my concern. I just wanted to know if we've changed our program. I mean, that's cool if so, but when I'm searching for people to fill spots on my board, and I can say, okay, if you do live in Georgia, then you can still serve on the board.
If you have any specific concerns about people on the agenda tonight, I'd be happy to take those. Everyone has submitted a Tennessee address, and I can research any other boards. But again, state law out of our hands does require state residency for most of the boards that we have.
Okay, thank you. And then Chairman, my
Yes, ma'am.
second question is, I'd like to get an update where we are with the renaming of the Brainerd Recreation Facility in honor of Chris Ramsey.
Mm.
It's been ongoing for the past 2.5 years now, and we've not gotten anywhere, I guess, because nothing has came in front of us to approve. But I have noticed, on several occasions, quicker things have gotten renamed, and now here's another one that's about to be renamed with the outdoor Chattanooga building. So I just would like for them to give us an update. I mean, they could email me. I'd like to know, are there any obstacles in place that's preventing the renaming to Chris Ramsey?
I see
or
our
what's
chief
going
of
on?
staff jumping up quickly on that one.
Yes, I'm happy to get you an answer on that. I know that I have heard discussion internally. That this is something that we're working on, but give me a couple hours to try and figure out an answer for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonah. Any other questions in our future considerations? I would want to bring up, if I may, under the mayor's office, Councilwoman Coonrod correctly identified the outdoor Chattanooga building being renamed, and I'm really, really happy you brought up Chris's project as well, because that's very important. So thank you for that. They did a fantastic job last week. If you watched at commission, it was very heart touching. Philip, I've known Mr. Grimes for quite a while here in the city, and I would like to ask the council, and we can do the same thing when this comes to us, if anyone would have any objection to the entire council sponsoring this. If you've known Philip and knew Philip over the years. If not, I would like to definitely lend my name to sponsoring this, but if anybody else would like to, or if there's any objection to the entire council, I think it would be a very genuine gesture. All right, I'm seeing no objection to the entire council being added to that resolution. Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments in future considerations? We do not have any department reports this afternoon under committee. Yes, ma'am. Hit your light again.
Chair, you made a great point just now with suggesting that the entire council, begin to sponsor things in honor of individuals. Like you said, Mr. Grimes was a great person. But we, as a council, we failed to do that when it came to the police officer that got killed. No one even suggested it. I mean, we did the commemorative street and all of that. But I mean, can we just automatically put it on the agenda to say, okay, well, or just note it that in those situations that council members, we're just gonna say that we're gonna sponsor it all together, so then no one will feel like, okay, well, we left out the police officer. No one even showed up, but everybody outside of Rakita and, the ones that was there, but then everybody went and showed up to honor this one. I mean, I just want to make it fair for everybody.
I feel you 100%. And yeah, it's like when we did the dedication of Mr. Eves, I sponsored that. And I think that if I had asked, I don't think anybody on this dais would have said no. So I think that's something we need to maybe talk about a little bit further in strategic planning. But I like where you're going. I think it's honorable and I think it's respectful. So I appreciate those comments. And if you don't mind, Madam Clerk, will you put that in our next strategic planning? I'd like to touch on that a little bit more, because I think Councilwoman Coonrod's onto something there that would benefit all of us. Thank you, Madam. I appreciate that. Any other questions? If not, we will have Parks and Public Works and an Education and Innovation Committee this afternoon. But first, we will do Parks and Public Works Committee with Chairman Hester. I will gather my notes and turn the chair over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome to Parks and Public Works Committee. We moved and second amendments. Let's go to 6. Ordinance on first reading. D through I, please.
An ordinance closing and abandoning a portion of the right-of-way located in the 1000 block of Winthrop Street as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions. An ordinance closing and abandoning a portion of right-of-way located in the 500 block of Crutzen Street as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions. An ordinance closing and abandoning an unopened right-of-way of 7757 and 7759 Eagle Gap Road as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions. An ordinance closing and abandoning a portion of the right-of-way located in the 1600 block of Rossville Avenue as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions. An ordinance closing and abandoning a portion of the unopened right-of-way located in the 1500 block of East 38th Street as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions. An ordinance closing and abandoning an opened right-of-way located in the 6900 block of Concord Circle as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions.
Thank you. We do have a light. Vice Chair.
Yes, I would like more information on items G and H, the two abandonment of right-of-ways. One Rossville Avenue and other on East 38th Street.
I'm going to stall. I got to appeal for help on the details.
Okay.
Mr. Ben Taylor.
Yes, ma'am. Rossville Avenue one.
Mm-hmm.
That is the, going to the back edge of sidewalk. It mirrors what we did across the street.
Okay.
That was a very wide right of way where we put a new city street through between the Pilgrim's Pride property. And this is a request to make that more of a usable lot behind the back edge of sidewalk.
Okay. And H?
And the other letter was A.
Mm-hmm. H, for
H.
1500 block of East 38th Street.
Okay, yes, this is a dead end of East 38th Street. The rest of the street had already been closed under previous abandonments, and this small portion has no further use. We can't connect anything else, and we're abandoning it for use by that property to expand their facility.
Okay, that's it. Thank you,
Got it?
Ben.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ben. See no other hands. Resolution 7, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to enter into a joint funding agreement with U.S. Geological Survey to operate 7 continuous real-time stream gauges located on North Chickamauga Creek, South Chickamauga Creek, Chattanooga Creek, Mountain Creek, excuse me, Wolfrevere Creek, Lookout Creek, and Friars Branch for emergency preparedness and flood response activities for the period beginning April 1, 2022 through March 31st, 2023, in the amount of $89,625.
Thank you. I see no hands. Resolution 7 for next week, please.
A resolution authorizing Chattanooga Parks and Outdoors to enter into a 4-year contract with Perfect Mind, Inc., RFP 216 Parks and Recreation Management Software Services, Park Management and Reservation Software. The first year will not exceed $50,000, and each subsequent year not to exceed $10,000 for a 4-year term to begin September 1, 2022.
Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, Scott, will you tell us a little bit more about this software program and how it improves the, I guess, scheduling, booking of our public facilities?
Be happy to, Mr. Chairman. This is bringing us into at least 2015 now in terms of the customer interface, where 90% of our transactions are done online. So it'll be a much smoother interface, universally work across all of our systems, including possibly the community centers with our partners over there, with community development as well. And also integrate in events so we can smoothly start processing these events. Just make things easier for folks to do at home. And one big addition, you'll actually be able to do it on your smartphone.
So if I wanted to book a wonderful new facility, say in Hickson, Tennessee, then it's going to be a lot easier.
It will be a lot easier. The code word is CD Smith, just to put in there, but we'll get you taken care of.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. 7Q, please. 7R, please. R.
Resolution
Sir,
authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to approve change order number 1 with Jacobs Engineering Group, Inc. for contract number W16022101 and Bwtp Equalization Basin and blower replacement improvements to add a second year of construction services resident project representation and to increase the contract by $497,285 for a revised contract total amount of $2,541,477.
Thank you. Yes, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to renew contract number W210020201 manhole rehabilitation blanket contract for year 2 of a 3-year term to Video Industrial Services, Inc. of Birmingham, Alabama for $270,000 plus $30,000 contingency for a total amount of $300,000.
Thank you. Thank you. That concludes Parks and Public. Were we prepared to do the Parks presentation? Thank you. We're going to turn it over to who's that? Education and Innovation Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome to Education and Innovation Committee. Approval of minutes.
Second.
Minutes been approved? Okay, so have a presentation. HCS Ed Connect presentation.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much. We're really excited to be back with you today. So my name is Rachel Emond. I'm the Community Engagement Specialist for Hamilton County Schools. I'm here today with colleagues from the Enterprise Center and EPB, of course, and we're going to give you a quick update on HCS Ed Connect. All right. Go ahead and get
Thank
started.
you.
All right. So this year, at the end of our second year, we have over 16,000 students connected to HCS Ed Connect. All of our students in the district who are either economically disadvantaged or enrolled in...
Excuse me just a second, please.
Sure.
Councilman Leffert, you have a question?
Ma'am, I'll wait till the end of the presentation.
You sure?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You're fine. All right, so all of our students in the district who are either economically disadvantaged or enrolled in free and reduced lunch are eligible for this program. So that 16,000 number is really exciting for us. Of course, when you look at this in the classroom, it has really great impacts, and Jeff will talk specifically about the research that we're seeing. But anecdotally, we know that when teachers don't have to worry about connection, whether that's access to a device or access to Wi-Fi, it greatly expands the type of educational experience that they can provide. We've got students who are researching their interests at home, they're accessing Khan Academy, they're learning to speak the English language through a program that they can use on their Wi-Fi at home now, and all of those things are great. 28,000 individuals connected means that we're seeing families use this for things like telehealth. They're looking up healthy, oh my gosh, recipes. There we go. I lost that word for a minute. Looking up healthy recipes to use at home, which they haven't been able to do before. These are really exciting impacts that we're seeing in our community. Here we've got a map that shows a little bit of our connection throughout just our Chattanooga city. Of course, you all know that this is something that's available throughout our entire county. Overall, our connection rate is well over 40%, which has stayed pretty steady from the beginning. So we're excited that that didn't take too much of a dip in the second year running. You can see from this map, of course, that the need aligns in these communities with the connections that we're seeing. And additionally, this isn't just something that we're seeing a need for in our urban core of our community, but also in our suburban communities and our rural communities as well. Even at the end of year 2, we're still sitting at only a 13% opt-out rate, which tells us that this is still something that's needed even post-pandemic, which isn't necessarily something that's true, but right, we're operating in a post-pandemic world in our schools right now. And we're still seeing a relatively low opt-out rate, which is that helps us make sure that we are still on the right track and providing the correct resources for our families, of course. Those who are opting out, most of those folks are families who are enrolled at our CEP schools, where all students are automatically enrolled in free and reduced lunch. And so they're choosing to opt out and say, I don't actually have a need for this program. That's most of those opt-outs where they're coming from. And of course, we have to highlight our staff every chance we get. We're going to make it sound pretty easy while we're up here, but we know that a lot of our staff and schools have put in hours to getting students connected beyond just the work that we've done on this at the district level. So we're really grateful for our partnership with the Enterprise Center. We've been able to award some of those individual staff and schools for the work that they did. So those individuals were given a $500 award, and schools were given grants anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000. Those grants were used up to principal discretion. So they used it on things like teacher appreciation, classroom supplies, and we've got several schools who are saving it for something this year. But we're always grateful to be able to award staff and schools for the work that they've done. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff.
Thank you, Rachel. And before jumping into some of the research, I do want to say a thank you to the council for their leadership on this, that we were able to start this program well before the federal funds that are now available. We are years, and in some instances, decades ahead of other communities, and will stay that way, which is really exciting. It's been truly the privilege of my career to work on this program. And as a very, very new dad, I'm especially proud that my daughter is going to grow up in a community that invests in education and equity in this way. I think it also represents just kind of the best of Chattanooga, right? This is a public-private partnership, but not just in a financial way, in the true investment of time and partnership from the many organizations, public, private, philanthropic, community-based, that have invested in the program. As we jump into the research, we have, as we mentioned in our presentation last year, brought on an internationally known, Lynch School of Education at Boston College, ed tech testing experts to look at this program, as well as brought our own Dr. Ellis, who's on loan to the National Science Foundation, but still working on the research here to lead both formative and summative research, right? We want to know that we're having an impact, but we also want to know how to make this program better. So it's an evolving process. We're really cognizant that sometimes research can feel like an experiment on our residents and neighbors. And so making sure that this is guided by community voices from organizations with deep roots in Chattanooga, as well as from Hamilton County Schools, EPP, and our organization, so they can be really responsive to the needs of our community. Just on the research, right, we're going both broad and deep with that research. We're looking at countywide data sets, everything from attendance, assessment data, to reflective and representative phone surveying of families. We were really worried about those phone surveys, particularly in this environment where you're getting spam calls and things like that. And what we found is that families wanted to stay on well over the time that we had allotted for the calls because they had a lot to say about the program. We're also doing really in-depth building level and household level interviews with families so that we can combine both, that breadth of data with the depth of the impact, because we know for the 16,242 students on today's count, there's a story that goes with every one of them. As I go a little far forward. As I said, multiple research methods. Just a few quick high-level findings that we're excited about. That nearly all HCS EdConnect participating families reported positive feelings towards technology and education. This is about their perception, about how they feel about having it in their home. This is higher than the large survey of national data sets that our researchers looked at. And it's turning into, again, on these
household level interviews, this perception is, here's a quote from one of our families. English is a second language in our home. So when my daughter is struggling with spelling or reading, I tell her to ask Alexa how to spell a word, what the word means. I mean, we're seeing fundamental change in households based on this changing perception of what education can mean for students. A majority of HCS Ed Connect eligible families reported frequent use of the device to support their kids. So this has been really big, particularly around things like Power School. When we're talking about parent engagement, we're seeing increased parent engagement from those households who have HCS Ed Connect. And again, the anecdotal stories from these in-depth interviews are, I never used Power School before. My student would tell me everything's fine at school. Now I know to check up. Now I'm in constant contact with teachers. Now I'm participating in parent-teacher conferences and IEP plans and work like that. Again, HCS Ed Connect families reported widespread and frequent use of digital devices in support of their students' education and for personal growth. What's really important here is that whole families are taking advantage. One of the interviewees happened to mention that she had researched, found, and was starting a job the next day because of having internet in the home. Rachel mentioned the recipes. It's one of my favorite examples. A family who used some of the extra money they had to buy an Instapot, look at recipes online and cook as a family. I mean, that's fundamental change in a household, thanks to internet access. The last one is that HCS Ed Connect has nearly closed the race-based differences in a family's usage of technology. This we are tracking very, very closely because it's a pretty big finding as we look at the difference and the parity between how families are using technology in their home based on whether or not they have access to the internet in their home. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jermaine to talk a little bit more, or to Evan to tell a little bit more.
Good afternoon, Council. Again, EPB is very proud to be a part of HCS Ed Connect, and thank you so much for your initial investment, which has really got this program going forward. We were able to leverage those dollars to create the program that we have today. Just to talk a little bit about the infrastructure. Right now, the funding that we have is sustainable for infrastructure costs going forward. So thankfully we're not here to ask for more money, but just to give you an update there. We continue to work with apartment complexes and multi-dwelling units. We're down to get access to those families. So a lot of the apartment complexes had marketing agreements that prevented us from going in there and giving service. But once we, with some arm twisting and tell them a little bit about the program, they've been willing to get us in there. So I think we started with around 40, and we're down to about 3 or 4 of those now. So we've been making progress there. Another thing that we're really proud of is the response time. Families most of the time are connected within 2 weeks of signing up for the service. So we're really excited, and our team has been really working hard and putting the Ed Connect families as a priority going forward. But I'll turn it back over to Jeff. Thank you again for your support.
And that's right. Before we close, just as we move forward, right, this is a long-term investment, very different from actually so many of the emergency responses that we saw in other communities, at least a decade, on closing the digital divide for Hamilton County families. Some of the things that are integral to this project as we move forward, again, all means all, reaching the most disconnected families. Rachel mentioned the overall sort of connection rate, just for context, 70% of those who have opted into the program are connected. So it's higher when you look at it that way. And it's effectively 100% of those who have scheduled their installation are installed. So there are these couple gaps that we're working on with building level ambassadors, really making sure that that final step gets finished and everybody who really needs this is connected. Again, the research component is both about learning what an impact this has made, but also making sure this program remains effective and responsive to the needs of our school district and of our, making sure that students are future ready, are prepared to excel in 2022 and onwards. And so that, if there are any questions, and we can also follow up with much more detailed data if you are interested.
Okay, thank you. Council, do you have any questions? You can go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, let me say thank you for coming back. We had a bit of a scheduling conflict. Stacking our afternoons can be quite the hurdle at times. So I appreciate you coming back. The initial investment, if I recall, was $1 million. If I'm correct, Evan, is that right? 1.5 million. Thank you for reminding me. That has the 16,242. Are those new connections that didn't exist before, or were some of those moved into the program?
Some of those transitioned from
Some of the-
individuals who were paying for service. Some have shifted over from other service providers to what is a much higher quality service. A large percentage are new connections.
Of course, they're using EPB, right?
I'm allowed to say it. I don't know that he is. That's correct.
Where do we, so obviously you're making, and we like this word around here a lot, is you're making substantial impact in the lives of families, not just their school children, but families in general, from what I'm hearing. Where do we go from here? What's next?
From our perspective at the Enterprise Center, right, thinking about long-term sustainable economic development, economic mobility, we have, honestly, for the first time, instead of measurements of what it means not to have a connection, we're looking at what it means to be connected. We're effectively the first community, the first school system that's our baseline, is a different relationship with the digital divide, with homework access, a generation of students who all have the same kind of access as well. So we're not talking about, as Rachel mentioned, students who some will be able to go home and do things differently than their peers. This is really changing what a classroom can be in a community, because it does not matter to a teacher what their assignment or interest is. Students can participate that on their own terms at home. That's, from a community perspective, continuing to see those, measure those, and help make sure that where we see these successes, they're replicated elsewhere.
And that's important, because as I watch my son doing homework or turning homework in, or even communicating with his teachers at 9 and 10 o'clock at night, and I thank you, teachers. Thank you so much for what you do. This access is critical. I mean, it really is critical to the process. And y'all are doing a great job. Thank you so much. I hope this just blossoms and keeps going. I love when you said all, because not long ago we were with Senator Haggerty at EPB, and Evan made the mistake of giving me the microphone. And then I asked the senator not just about the urban areas that this was working, but now I'm hearing suburban, because there's a lot of need out there as well. And in our rural communities, there's tremendous need in those areas as well. So I'm just tickled that you're encompassing all that and wrapping your arms around it. And my words to you are thank you, and keep up the great work.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Hester.
My words to you also is thank you. On behalf of all the future innovators, thinkers, learners, thank you. Responding to the needs of the students of Hampden County, bridging the educational gap. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate that. Appreciate your organization. Thank you.
Thank you. It is, we don't know where the next big idea comes from, but the more students who have the opportunities and experiences to be the person who comes up with it, we all succeed when that happens.
Okay. Thank you. Next, Councilwoman Dottley.
Yes. So my question is about, this is a great program. I see kids using it all the time. My question is about the equipment component. I know during the summertime, a lot of times at the end of the school year, most kids have to turn their computers back in, but some do need that continued learning throughout the summer. So I was wondering, for those who may not have a computer during the summertime. Does the Enterprise Center help provide those type of computers? I know there's the Tech Goes Home class. For students to continue that learning, because there's a gap a lot of times in the summertime, especially with students going virtual back in 2020, and it really took a lot of kids off course. So they need that catch up time in the summer. So is there an opportunity for equipment to kind of help fill that gap with the Ed Connect program?
I will quickly answer from the Enterprise Center's perspective and then turn it over to Rachel in Hamilton County. Yeah, you did mention Tech Goes Home. This is one of our signature programs. And again, about multi-generational learning, making sure anybody who would like that kind of access can participate. Again, also different from how some other communities have approached this. We've made sure that the internet exists for that whole time for our students who are living in more rural Hamilton County. Also, we don't take hotspots back until the end of the summer, et cetera. We want to make sure that the infrastructure exists no matter what. On the devices.
Yeah, so school issued devices, and we can get you specifically what our turn-in policy is, but many of our schools do allow students to keep their devices over the summer. A lot of the students who are asked to turn them in are those who are transitioning to a new school the following year. So if they're not going to be returning to their old school, but we can definitely get you the official language on that. And that was specifically the reason that most of our schools have transitioned to that policy, was so that students can continue to use their school issued devices for learning over the summer. Because a lot of our students we encourage to do Summer Reach, which is our summer school program as well, and we want them to be using those devices at home. So many of our students in the school district are able to keep those Hamilton County issued devices over the summer now, but I know we're still getting used to that. So a lot of families turn them in not realizing that their students are able to keep it. So there's a little bit of work to do there to make sure that that's still a smooth process, but we can definitely follow up with you all on specifically what our policy is.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So again, thank you, Rachel, Jeff, and Evan. And Evan, I do owe you a major apology because you have reached out to me for a very long time to do a one-on-one, a tour, and I am definitely going to hold you to that. So we're going to do that, okay? And I do want to say, we're talking about the education for the young. Don't forget the aging neighborhood as well. And Historic Orchard Knob is on board with you all of that. Part of that TVA $608,000 grant is going to afford us to have access to that. The computers, the phones, the language, and the education on how to use. And I'm going to be the first one in the class. So thank you so much for that. You all did an amazing job, and you really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, let's adjourn until 6. Hit this. Yeah.